I guess for those who haven't seen it, we should introduce this. In case you're unaware, well, welcome to Circling Seattle Sports, of course, Charles. You'll recognize Dylan because Dylan has obviously been on a few things, more than a few things that we've done with the PWHL and the Torrent. But in case you're not aware, today I think is the first episode of the Downpour. We're officially doing this partnership here in covering the Torrent with our respective shows slash podcasts. So it's funny. I was joking to Dylan, and I hope it lands for anybody who's listening to this. But with this being kind of an extra edition of what we were talking about, because that downpour episode is going to have RJ and Dylan, and then myself joining it. There's a good amount of stuff going on in there, so obviously you'll want to check that out first. But this is like the runoff part of it because there's a little bit more that wasn't necessarily covered or not as in depth in that main episode that we're gonna do over here. So no, I don't think it's gonna be as structured or as maybe serious as you'd expect, but there's some things that are interesting. I think basic notes will get out of the way. I would be shocked, Dylan, if we see Anna Terlova tomorrow.
Same.
Um, she's day to day with a lower body injury. He's been around the facility. Of course, we saw her skating after practice today. Before the main group started back on Monday. Today's Tuesday, right? We're all out of sorts. I'm out of sorts, at least. Dylan's probably not. Um, so I just don't think she'll be ready for tomorrow. Maybe if they were playing on the weekend, but yeah,
Yeah.
I would doubt that. But Jenna Buglioni, I'd kind of be shocked if she didn't play. Just because she's gone through the last two practices. She was missing from the Sunday practice with an upper body injury. Striatic, if you know Striatic on social media, he was the one who alerted me. I guess Patty from Gloves Off Seattle was the first one to see it. I'm giving necessary credit here. But yeah, I would expect they roll the same lineup out for tomorrow's game against the Sirens. I think we saw the same lines and the same pairs from uh from practice today. So just wanted to do some housekeeping there. I imagine yeah, Buglioni won't miss a game. She misses one practice. No Teralova, unfortunately, and I would expect same lineup. So and that kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about with the mask and Corinne Schroeder. We'd be surprised if it wasn't Schroeder. My first main talking points are actually relating to the crease. So continuing my goalie discussion here. But the first thing was getting to see the mask. Yesterday was the first day that Schroeder had it out. One of the initial quotes that we got from her during the first few scrums of training camp was that she had no idea where it was, Dylan, and that's not great. Usually, I imagine they have some idea when they'll get it. Um,
And it wasn't
but
even like, oh, it's been shipped and it'll be like any day. It was
right,
like, I don't even know like if it's finished yet. Like it was
yeah.
not a lot of communication in the whole process, it sounded like.
No, it was interesting. As Dylan mentioned in the main downpour episode, got to talk to Corinne Schroeder about it after practice today. A little bit of the details and stuff. I'm going to write about that as soon as I get done with Dylan here, and kind of put that out. Nick, one of our photographers, was there today. He was really excited. He came up to me today at Kraken practice. Said, "Do you need photos of it? Do you have photos yet?" I was like, "No, buddy, go right ahead." Nick loves his goalies and he appreciates his setups, so he was really excited to get out there for that. Anyway, um, but no, it was interesting. I asked, I said, "Hey, did you have like whoops, when did you get it?" Because yeah, I had no idea. Went through the scrimmages without it. Had to use her siren's back plate in a white bucket. Um, I was hoping that she'd get it before the home opener after not having it for the season opener. Not the case, but it's finally in. I guess it kept saying delayed, delayed. It was supposed to arrive on time initially. So I guess the process was right, but they had to overnight it, which I was surprised he didn't just do that anyway. But no, it's pretty cool. It's got some cool nods. Obviously, if you've seen it, I'll go in there and edit some photos into this episode. But you've got this wave crashing on the right hand side, on Schroeder's right hand side, with the Space Needle, the Seattle skyline. There's the bricks in the front and the chin, the 30 number on the chin. The bricks are a continuation from her Siren's mask. She joked that because of what the Siren's mask had the bricks and like graffiti. She said this is maybe the bricks of a seawall. I was like, oh, you're funny. Uh, you've got a fish jumping out of water on the left hand side of the wave, and on the back there's some fun nods here. One is a 24 for Terry Roy. I think it's Terry Roy and not Waugh, but Terry Roy. Uh, wait, make sure I get that right. See, I'm messing up here already, Dylan. Travis Roy, sorry,
Yeah,
Travis
yeah.
Roy. Um, was had a pretty inspirational story from Boston University Terrier hockey. Um, he took one shift back in 1995 and was paralyzed, and from there dedicated his life to helping others with spinal cord injuries and funding research. So she's got TR for his initials and the number 24 back there, as well as a quote from one of her old coaches. His name was Tim, and the quote is Tim's heart beats on because he donated his heart. So that was really cool. She's got, you typically see goalies, right, with some personal mementos on their masks. So cool to see the details, learn about that from Corinne herself. She seemed more than happy to talk about that and know that the setup is finally complete for at least one of the goalies. I know um, CJ and Hannah are still waiting on theirs. But yeah, just going over that. Did you have any thoughts, Dylan, on the mask itself, or any
Yeah,
any of that?
I think it looks really good. I mean, I think I'm excited that it's finally here, and that we get to see it. But I think that it really fits the vibe of the Pacific Northwest really well, right? It's kind of got the silhouette of the trees going around it, kind of creates almost
Hmm.
like a horizon line. I
Mm,
like that and I appreciate that. And how it you can then kind of delineate the different parts of the mask, right? Like it kind of helps separate that stuff and it kind of cuts across then the cage and it just works better, I think, when you have something like that, some sort of
mm,
line built in like that. And it's of course natural to have the trees and everything for up here. So I think that that component of it works really well. I like having the Seattle skyline on the one side, like having the salmon on the other. I think that that looks really good. Again, talking about both the city you're playing in and also a natural aspect of things up here, and it ties in with the torrent, right? And the way that the waterways really cut through the land and how important that those are here.
mm.
I love the back plate though, because you get the trees and stuff, obviously, but you get one of those beautiful glacial lakes, right?
Right.
And the little bit of like reflection into that, and then the mountain. Again, it was it confirmed? Is it Rainier? It looked like Rainier.
Oh, yes, Mount Rainier. Confirmed Mount
Okay.
Rainier.
Okay. I was like, Charles, you had one job in this interview. Um, Yeah, I think that that looks beautiful too because it's one of those things like when you're thinking about a goaltender, what's like the ideal kind of mindset and feel that you want from them? You want that kind of calm, collected
Right.
type like feel and vibe, and that backplate to me really emphasizes that and gives a good idea of it and puts off that vibe and energy. And so I appreciate what the backplate especially has going on, but the rest of it, I think the use of colors is good. It's not overly bright, right? But
Hmm.
it's very much like a good grouping of colors that all work well together. I'm forgetting what that's called when you kind of pull colors from the same part of the color wheel together. There's a word for it.
Oh,
Um,
um,
but um, it looks really, really strong. I think it's going to look great with both the home and the road jersey. And I think that that's always good. I hate when goalie masks look great with the home jersey and
oh,
then it looks like weird and out of place with the away. I think this one's going to do really well with both.
you saying like color blocking?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think one of the other things is, and I don't know, I'm not trying to say there's a possibility of otherwise, like someone not doing this. But it's nice to see, when players buy in, and they've fully they embrace it, right? Because at least seeing some of the comments from folks that follow us, and I'm sure you guys get it too. But, seeing folks who buy in and they really, make themselves part of this city, people are more willing to maybe support them or be fans of them, right? It's just like, at least staying in the goalie realm, how much fun people have looking at the details with Joey's masks and some of the details that, Phil has added in his mask. So I don't know. It was really cool to get this and complete the whole set, right? Because like seeing the green jerseys in person, right, on the Climate Pledge Ice was great.
Yep.
Yeah. Even looking back at these photos I'm looking at from that game, like we've talked about how good the green looks, I think since camp, but then you just see the bland white puck, and it's like something's missing here. But yeah, that's a lot of goalie talk. As I mentioned, I'm gonna get up
It's
here and write.
important. People
Yeah,
always
it's
say I hate
it's
on the
fun.
goalies. No, I
Oh,
gotta fix that reputation here.
start the Dylan goalie appreciation campaign here. It's fun because at least in other sports, I think there's rarely this much customization from a player that you get. Even like my big, I've always grew up a baseball guy, right? So even like catchers can't really customize too much with their gear. So
Hmm.
it's always fun. I wanted to stay in the
And you better,
crease.
I was gonna say real quick, and you better not ever try it in the NFL. Because
Oh yeah, God
the few
forbid.
times we see guys try to customize their cleats,
Any
it does not go
creativity?
over well.
No, that's not allowed. No fun, Dylan. It's in the name. No fun, not
No
NFL.
fun league.
Anyway, um, some that fans have brought up and have been interested in, um, is how this. It's funny because again, kind of mixing the teams here, but how the Torrent have handled their trio.
Yeah.
I think on paper you pencil in CJ as the number two, but fans have kind of even I like when we got the initial lineup for night one, I was kind of like, oh, Hannah Murphy is suiting up. That's kind of interesting. Um, and then again from Minnesota, but after talking to you about it, I think at practices between the games, I understood it more. But that's why I wanted to bring this up is to kind of talk about that. Why do you think? Because this isn't something that like we've brought up to O'Rourke or we have like on the record, but there's a thought process behind it, at least that you've brought up, and it makes a lot of sense when I hear it. Again, people have been like, "Hey, why isn't CJ one of the two listed?"
Hmm.
Right? But again, when you mention it, I think it makes sense. It's interesting because I think, as I mentioned on the downpour, I have confidence in this entire trio to go out there on a night-to-night basis and be between the pipes, to handle business. But why do you think that Hannah Murphy is the one listed as the backup? At least through these two games, behind Schroeder.
I think it's because she plays a very similar style to Schroeder. You look at I mean, even before you kind of get into the play styles, even right, Hannah Murphy's only an inch shorter than Schroeder, where CJ Jackson, there's a pretty big drop off there in the height department, and that influences how all three of them play the position. With Schroeder and Hannah Murphy, it's more of a controlled, using their size, their length. They can take away the complete, the bottom of the net completely when they're down in butterfly, and they kind of play then more, um, not conservative, but a more angles based approach, right? A little bit more of an analytical approach to the position. They want to be in position, they want to be square to the puck, and then they're gonna play based off of that. When you look at CJ and how they play, you're seeing somebody who's a lot more athletic. And again, needs to be athletic because doesn't have that same like length, which is pretty important in the position. And you see a lot of this like on the Kraken side of things with Joey and Matt Murray versus Philip Grubauer. And there, the height difference isn't even as large as what we're talking about on the Torrent side of things, but how much that influences kind of their style of play. But CJ plays a lot more of an athletic style. And I think that when you're considering who should be backing up, you probably want the goaltender you're talking about a bad scenario is played out if this person's getting into the game at all, right? Because it means that something has happened to, in this case, Schroeder, right? An injury, something has caused her to leave the game. And I think that you want to follow that up. If you're having to make that switch mid-game, you want somebody who's going to play a similar style to her so that you don't then have to like have the defense change what they're doing in front, right? It's one thing to go into the game knowing, okay, we got CJ back there, more athletic style. That's going to change then the angles and the approach that we play up front in front of them. It's one thing to do that before the game and kind of game plan for it and have that be the mindset going in. What you don't want is there's 9 minutes left in the second period and now you have to make that adjustment, right? It's a difficult thing to do. And so I think that that's for me anyway, that's my best guess, but that is my guess as to why we were seeing Murphy back up Schroeder is just because that play style is similar. The team in front would not have to change what they're doing if Murphy came in because she plays such a similar style to what Schroeder's doing, and then you could make adjustments from there. Because I do think if, knocking on wood, there was an injury to Schroeder that was going to last through several games, I think CJ becomes the starter. Like as much promise as Murphy has, and there was even things today that like we were noticing and pointing out with her, she's just not ready yet. She's a rookie, very promising rookie. I think going to have a very great career in the PWHL, but not quite there yet. And so it's just one of those things where I think if something happens mid game, you want Murphy to take over. In the long run, though, I think CJ would be the one to take over in net if Schroeder had to miss significant time.
Right. That's something I think about with that, right? Is continuing that play style is when you've got a team like this, that's an expansion team that everybody's new. Granted, there are pockets of players that know each other. If Seattle can as they're gonna keep as much consistent as possible, right? Like I
Hmm.
imagine they're gonna want to get as much out of these lines that we've seen out of these. I'm not gonna try to say consistent too much. These lines just build up that chemistry, build up the cohesion. Yeah, if you're used to as a defender playing in front of one goalie style, if yeah, as you mentioned, if something happens, forbid that, having that similarity and not having to change mid, because if it's game to game, then it's different. But if it's in a game, it's just the consistency part is where I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Is you want to stick with something if they can control that and make sure it happens, make sure there is some sort of similarity. That makes sense to me. And, again, as I mentioned, when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So, what was it? Oh, yeah. And then I guess I wanted to start with those two, because we had, I think, in the Downpour episode, ended talking about Schroeder and her play, but didn't quite get to the mask itself in detail. Wanted to bring
Yeah.
those up. And then the other thing, because there's a lot that was talked about, and it feels like most of what I'm talking about nowadays is this team, is I guess what has surprised you about this group through two actual games. We kind of get stir crazy through training camp dates, and it's like, okay, can you play a game? And then they do the scrimmages, but we can't watch them. I guess what stood out to me, one is Brooke Bryant, because I know we kind of talked about her, and you bring up the stat about points per 60, and even the game score looks really good. Game score per 60, sorry. Her shots on goal per 60 are really high.
Hmm.
Um, I know you talked about the shooting percentage, right? Um, just yeah, if when that opportunity arises, what that might look like for her. But also, it's just really fun to learn more about these. Like that's one thing. The other thing is to me just learning the personalities of these players. Because somebody that had to step in with Annetta Terlova out, right? Lindy Lubdell, who maybe these deeper stats that we're looking at on the this master sheet here don't necessarily compliment her, but I thought she was steady, and that's all I needed her to be, right? In
Hmm.
this game with Lobdell, I mean, sorry, with Terlova out, she's got a great personality. We talked to her, I believe, Sunday after practice, and she's just very great to talk to. She says she loves meeting people, so if you see Lindy out in Seattle or at the rink, well, not
Say
in the same
hi.
way, say hi. I will try. I think I'll try and throw that that clip in here.
I love meeting people and I love saying hi. So if anyone ever sees me, come say hi.
But yeah, I don't know. It's fun. Like Emily Brown's been great. Megan Carter, love talking about her. The other blue liners on this roster. I think she kind of lit up when I asked her about that. So, not that I doubted that they had personality. Right, there were some players you knew were going to come in with that, but it's fun. It's fun to learn about them, and hopefully pass that along to the followers, right, the fan base, so they can learn these players that they're trying to support. Yeah, that's what stood out to me over these first two games.
Yeah, it is. I just about in every single way possible, a complete 180 from covering the Kraken. Right? Like that's like literally what this has been. You have the players with personality. They seem to genuinely enjoy being able to showcase that and talk about what they're doing. Right. And I think that that's been a big thing because, so often when you're covering the NHL, and I don't know how it is with, say, like the Mariners or with some of the other teams around town, the Sounders, and then if college covering the men and women UW teams. But certainly with the Kraken and with NHL teams, this isn't just a Kraken specific thing. NHL players, they tend to shy up when they're in front of the camera, right? When the media group surrounds them, and I get it, it's an awkward situation when we're all crowding around you in your locker. It's like, okay, this is not great. Um, but this group, I mean, they really seem to embrace it. I think they understand kind of how important it is, right? With them being uh, professionals and the place that women's professional sports is at right now, not just here, but like internationally in Canada and kind of around the world, and how it really does feel like this is the next place for sports to grow. Is on the professional women's side of things, not just in hockey, but across fields. And I think that they understand that, and I think that they are ready for it and they're embracing it. And I think that they know that the media game is part of that,
Mm.
and it excites them, right? I think there's also a level of when you've played as as long as they have and you've put as much into it as they have, right? When you're talking about people who are now professional athletes in their sport, there is just so much time and dedication, and it consumes you, right? And now somebody actually wants to hear about it. Right? Like, why wouldn't you want to share about it, right? This thing that you obviously love enough to let it consume you, to let it be your entire life, and to sacrifice all the things that you have had to sacrifice for it. Why wouldn't you want to share that with people? Why wouldn't you want them to also be excited about it and to come and watch you play? Like, to me, that's always felt like a natural thing. And again, for some reason, the NHL never seems to get on board with that. I know other leagues are a little bit better about getting on board with that. Certainly, you look at like the NBA, something like that, they understand that. But I appreciate that from this group, these players, is that they very much want to kind of let people in, so to speak, and be a part of this process, particularly this year while they are an expansion team. And that's just it's so nice. It's so nice, Charles, right? To be able to cover that.
Who? No,
Ooh,
yeah, it's it's a great point because that's something that, if I don't know if anyone's been around for that long, but the main way I started doing all of this was interviews with people, and I would just reach out however I could. That was
Mhm.
email, LinkedIn, Instagram DM, was like however I could do it, right? And I remember I interviewed a bunch of Rain players, Seattle Rain players. Previously, OL Reign, they played in Tacoma at Cheney Stadium, where the AAA Rainiers play. And some of the PR told me was that, yeah, the players you're talking to really like doing this because they haven't like never been interviewed before. And so, I'm sure stuff like that is, you mentioned the state of where women's sports is. That's obviously changing a lot. There's so many folks who want to get the interview, whether that's because they are interested in your story or they're doing it for their own content, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, no, it's great. It'll be cool to see how, you know, coverage of this team goes throughout the year. I'm sure, like any other sport, that'll be dependent on their success on the ice, right?
Yep.
Um, but no, it's interesting. It's great that they've got the local TV deal with Fox so that people haven't like as easy as going to YouTube is to watch a game, right? Some people, if it's on a channel they know, that's all they need. So yeah, no, that's it's a good point, because yeah, I'm sure a ton of them, maybe with some of the players who don't get as much shine because everybody wants to talk to the Hillary Knights and the Alex Carpenter and but some of the players even I wasn't super familiar with, like a Megan Carter. I knew some of the Boston players like Emily Brown, like Hannah Bilka, Lexia Gia was somebody who when the takeover tour practices were here had like this set of photos where she was like fake boxing one of the faceless mannequins that the Kraken have, right? So I was familiar with some of them, but even like Mariah Keppel, who has this whole brand, she's got her own clothing brand, she's got her own design that she does. Um, it's fun that people are obvious. A lot of people are noticing it because there's a lot of stories about it. But Mara Wagner, who's a Seattle kid, right? It's great to see that
Yeah.
story. So no, there are a lot of stories to tell, and I'm hoping to do a lot of that as the season goes on. Is there anything on the ice that maybe has surprised you, or is maybe this team kind of unveiling what you had kind of thought of them?
I mean, I think, we knew it was going to start slow. I was trying to do my best to caution people about that. I talked about that with you, talked about that on the downpour previously before the season started. So in that sense, like that, most things haven't been too surprising. I think the number one thing that's been the most surprising is just the lack of offense, right? We knew defense was going to be the thing that was going to take the longest to kind of come together. It relies the most on chemistry and communication. That was going to be the thing that's going to hold this team back in the early part of the season. Really thought the offense was not going to have a problem. Like I would have thought all the games were going to go like that first game against Vancouver, where
Mm.
it's just kind of a real back and forth style thing, and you're getting just, you know, combined 7 to 10 goals a game, and that's just kind of be the way it is, and you're just trying to win in a shootout essentially if you're the Torrent. And instead, we're seeing a team that's really struggling to score. They have the lowest shooting percentage in the league. Not particularly close either. I think there's a strong element of luck that has played into that. I think again, your competition is probably skewing things here a little bit. Talked a little bit about it on the downpour, but like I really was not expecting the Serdachny line to be like the matchup line where you're having them go out there and essentially like look, their job is to go and play against the top line of the other team and try to win that matchup. And I think that, we'll see how long that continues. If that was just because you're playing a really good team on paper in Vancouver, similar to you, and then you're playing the back-to-back Walter Cup champion team in Minnesota, maybe that doesn't continue moving forward. But I think that that's something that I wasn't totally expecting. I really thought, if anything, maybe that Alex Carpenter line is the one that's like having to eat those tough matchups, and there maybe that affects their ability to get going a little bit, and you have them kind of doing that. But then the Serdachny line with Hannah Bilka and Jesse Eldridge is able to come in, and they're just going to feast because there is no second line around the league that's going to be able to keep up with them. And instead, it's kind of been the opposite. And we're seeing that the Carpenter line is getting those second line matchups. They're feasting on those. And then the only reason they don't have more on the board is just because they're just not getting the bounces, right? But all three of them having 5 shots on goal in that Minnesota game, 5 shots on goal each. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, I think the lack of goal scoring has probably been the one thing that's really surprised me so far this year.
Is there anything in particular that you might be looking at for tomorrow's game? Because you look at the Sirens team, they get Sarah Fillier and what last
Hmm.
year I believe it was, and she's very exciting. You know,
Yeah.
uh, it's interesting kind of looking at this roster because as we talked about on the downpour, they were gutted. The Sirens team was gutted, but you know, I think I don't know. I don't want to skew your words, right? But I think you and I feel different ways about the Sirens team. Like, well, and if I'm wrong, correct my course, right? But I'm worried. They feel like a wild card to me because this is a group that I could look it up verbatim, but if I remember correctly, because I've stared at this for a while, I've stared at their schedule for a while. I believe they won. They put up 4 goals in their opener.
Hmm.
Uh, they were shut out by Montreal. and then they won 5-1 against Vancouver. And I say, well, Montreal, I'm not surprised necessarily because you know, uh, if we're ranking contenders, I'd put the Victoire up pretty high. Just with having Marie Poulin and some of the players on that, on Rene DBN. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, that's not they're not a bad team. Oh yeah, they 4-0'd Ottawa. Who went all the way into the Walter Cup last year. They lose in a shutout fashion to Montreal at Place Bell, and then they hammer Vancouver in their home opener. They're an interesting team to me in that regard. You put up 9 goals in 2 of your games. Getting shut out's not great, but Seattle knows that. I don't know. They're a wild card to me. I'm intrigued by them, but and at least, and this is, I don't want to like get taken out of context and like get slammed for this, like bad take exposed. But once we get past Sarah Fillier, I know Taylor Gerard on that third line. I'm interested to see where this offense will truly come from outside of maybe those top two lines.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it's one of those where I think, earlier today when we were talking about it, I maybe wrote them off a little bit too much, and then like looking at them in preparation for this stuff, I was like, oh, you know what? They are kind of scoring, and I'm kind
Yeah.
of curious to see how they're doing it, like what the style is, because
Right.
just based on looking at things from like a numbers perspective, this feels like one of those teams where it's a lot of young, skilled pieces, and I'm very curious to see if they're the kind of group where coaching staff is just like go out there and play, and
Mm,
it's just like don't worry about structure. It's fine if these games go back and forth. Be creative, use that creativity and get the job done that way. Or if we're going to be looking at stuff at this team and say like, wow, no, this is just a team that kind of feels ahead of schedule, and what a great job they've done rebounding from, being kind of down last year and then gutted through the expansion process. And look, they're really rallying and coming together, and they're playing this complete game. But for me, kind of looking at it from a numbers perspective, this feels like, something I talk about all the time on the NHL side of things with like San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim. Don't worry about the structure. You have years to work on that with your
yeah.
young players. Go out there and let them be special, right? Like you draft these players high. You're talking about like multiple first overall picks on this team, right?
Right.
Um, let them be first overall picks. Let them go out there and show what they can do. Let them play that style. Let them play a little loose and work on that creativity. They'll learn what they can't get away with once they're out there, and then you start working on that structure over time. But at least early on in the season, it feels like, you let them play, and kind of what comes from that comes from that. And that's kind of how they're getting things done, right? Like outside of Gerard, it's a team thing, right? Where everybody's just kind of adding goals from all over this depth chart right now. So I'm kind of intrigued to see if, that kind of expectation I have for them holds up tomorrow. That, and then look, you're getting incredible goaltending, and that would also help. You play kind of fast and loose as if you have a goaltender who's rocking a 949 save percentage.
That doesn't hurt, right? Well, yeah. I mean, you mentioned the team aspect of things, and just looking at the game score for this New York team, they don't have anybody in the negative. Like they're all
No.
positive. And I'm sitting here worried about Sarah Fillier, and I don't want to be here sitting here tomorrow on the bridge if she's got 2 goals or something. I'm like, oh, I was wrong. But she's not even who I should necessarily be worried about looking at game score because you mentioned Taylor Gerard. She had that hat trick in their opener, and then Maddie Wheeler's right behind her. Those are two really solid numbers for them in terms of game score. So yeah, no, it's so interesting with this league with the PWHL, right? Because there's only 8 teams, and I say only, and obviously there was kind of frustration with the league expanding when they did, but there's just so much talent that's being fed into this league right away. That's either was already here. Look, obviously Hillary Knight, Marie-Philippe Plin, um, as maybe the two faces of that, and then there's the young players. So yeah, no, um, that's all I got. We should get out of here. But obviously, it feels like we could talk about this team forever.
Yeah.
Um, It's exciting. There's a lot of excitement, and I think there was so much enthusiasm, right? I mean, we saw how the home opener looked. Absolutely wild to see that the merch line wrapped from the layer to the I always get them mixed up. I think it was the Wafed Club all the way over there on the other side of the rink because I believe the layer is closer to the Symmetric Club. uh Pretty remarkable,
It
people
was a
wanted to
great
get in
showing.
there early, so just you hope that that continues, right? So we'll see how the crowd looks tomorrow. Either way, Seattle still looking for that first win on the season. Would be pretty fitting for Corinne Schroeder to get her first win of the year against her former team. So,
It would.
and hey, throw in an
With the
Alex
mask.
Carpenter goal. Got the mask now. You're not rocking the, yeah, no, it's,
I was gonna
get
say,
along.
who do you think's gonna be more motivated to win against New York, Carpenter or Schroeder?
Um, see,
It's tough.
I try to pick up on things, right? Whether they're said or not.
Uh-huh.
Alex Carpenter, like talking to her when they did the jersey launch, she seemed pissed. She seemed
Yeah.
ready to go. She did not seem happy. Uh, Same thing with Hillary. Like when the Boston games comes here and
Mm-hmm.
whenever they play them on the road, there will be a lot of motivation. But I think Alex Carpenter is, and again, I say it now, you gotta enjoy having those players on your roster because who knows how long they're gonna want to be here. You have like what NHL executives use like the word like horses, right, for their top guys like McKinnon and right, like in
Yeah.
my those players are in this league in that category. So enjoy it while you can because I haven't seen it on a team in Seattle, so it's great to have it. But to answer the original question, I think it's Alex Carpenter. I think
I
I
do
wouldn't
too.
be surprised to see her rip something in this game tomorrow. So
Yep.
yeah, no, it's great. Again, as I mentioned at the top of this, and if you haven't, for some reason just had to watch this whole video through before watching the Downpour episode, it's great that Dylan and I are going to have this, partnership going, as I've mentioned several times before, whether it's talking with RJ, who you called me earlier, or
I
with you.
didn't. I stopped myself.
You got close.
I got
I
close.
really heavily respect what ECH has done. I talk to these guys every game day. It's always weird in the off season, the hockey off season, because I don't see him. And then Dylan texts me, wondering when he's going to get a Capricin again. So, you know, anyway,
Priorities.
right. And until we see you again, take care of yourselves. Wait, hold on. I've completely forgot how I do my outro. Until we see you next time, take care of yourselves. Be well. Do whatever you can to make today a great day.